bring greetings from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Brian Favors, Brooklyn. It feels cold like Brooklyn here today, but that's another story. My name is Brian Favors, and I'm an educator in Brooklyn, and I'm the co-founder of the Nate Parker Foundation, which is, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. The Nate Parker Foundation is an organization that works to empower young aspiring filmmakers and storytellers to tell their stories from a culturally responsive perspective in a way that benefits us as people of African descent. So it is very fitting that we are at the Pan-African Film Festival for the second year in a row. And again, we are just blessed to be here. Before we get started, could I have all of the students who are part of the Nate Parker Foundation, if they could just stand up right now, turn around so they can see you. So these are about 20 of our 90 students. You guys can have a seat. These are about 20 of our 90 students. This class is from 2018. We're going to tell you a little bit about our programs throughout the evening, but this is a celebration about them. We started the Nate Parker Foundation in 2015, although Nate and I have been doing this work for over 20 years now. I met Nate when I started my career at Penn State University as an adjunct professor. Nate was a freshman. He and I met. I talked him into joining the student organization that I had started that got black athletes involved in the community. We did a lot of work back in the late 90s. We disconnected. He ended up going to Oklahoma, and then he went to Hollywood to start his movie career. I moved to Brooklyn, New York. I became a high school teacher, started a nonprofit that did African-centered rites of passage programs. And then in 2009, how many of you saw the film The Great Debaters? Classic. After the film The Great Debaters, Nate and I reconnected. And what initially started it, Nate had asked me, had reconnected, and we hadn't talked in about 5 or 6 years. And he asked me to help him to write a speech for the commencement of Wiley College, which is the home of The Great Debaters. Went to LA, helped him with the speech. The speech went well, and that started a whole new, what I really believe to be the foundation of our foundation. We started creating presentations and curriculums around his film. Anybody that's followed Nate Parker knows that he has only selected films that put us in a positive light. So we were really fortunate. Clap it up for that. Clap it up for that. So we traveled the country for about 5 years. We went from Florida to Brooklyn, California, colleges, high schools, alternative schools, creating presentations around his films, whether it was The Great Debaters, Blood Done Sign My Name, Tuskegee, the Tuskegee film. And in 2015, we decided we needed to consolidate our work and start the foundation. And in 2015, which ironically enough was 100 years from the film, The Original Birth of a Nation, right? The original, which, as we all know, anybody that knows about that film, it set a trajectory for showing black people in films in a way that completely degraded us. So on the 100-year anniversary, in addition to the film Birth of a Nation, we wanted to birth a new nation of storytellers who could be unapologetically black. Yes. So tonight means the world to us. This is the fruit. These young people, it's all about them. We're going to get to know them tonight. We're going to get to watch a short documentary that kind of explains their rite of passage experience, which is our staple program, our Nate Parker Summer Film Institute. We're going to watch a short film about it just so you can see what they go through. And then every year, every summer, they create their own film. They come together, they meet on Sunday. By Wednesday, they're working on their film that they've created, right? By Saturday, they're screening the film. By Sunday, they are family, right? So you guys are going to get to see their film. Well, this is the first time that we're actually showing it, so that's a blessing. We're also going to highlight one of our distinguished alum, who is now one of our colleagues. Could you stand up, Jalea? We're going to watch her film, Things with Feathers. She's one of our most noted alumni. Now she's a colleague of ours. She's working on other projects with us. So we're going to watch her film. We're going to have a discussion with her, some serious content. And then we're going to end showing a trailer of our project that's coming out in the summer, which is called the Hbcu Storytellers project. So we got a lot to show you. You're going to get to meet our students. And let me go ahead and stop talking so you guys can see it for yourself. So once again, let's just give it up for these young people. We thank you for coming. And just look forward to sharing this evening with you. Roll the film. Can we give it up one more time? Give it up. A little bit of a glimpse of our staple program, which is the Nate Parker Summer Film Institute at Wiley College. We have a department, a film department at Wiley College that we just got off the ground. So we had a chance to get a little bit of what our Summer Film Institute entails. As I said, they meet on Sunday. They spend 2 days that is all centered around workshops that challenge them to look at the role that the media has had in their lives as people of African descent, positive, negative, just a lot to get them opened up and to understand the responsibility and impact of film, right? Then they all come with ideas to pitch for a potential project that they can do that week. So this next person that I'm going to introduce was a Wiley College graduate who is now a graduate student at Arkansas. And I'm going to say a little bit about him. He's actually the one. Let's give it up for Austin Dean. In addition to the fact that he was the one that pitched the idea for the film that you guys are about to see, another significant thing about this young man, as many of you know, The Great Debaters was a movie that kind of reinvigorated debate, not only here throughout the diaspora for people of African descent, in Rwanda and Kenya, all over the place. Wiley College didn't even have a debate team when that film came out. Denzel Washington gave $1 million, right, to start the debate team. They did not have a debate team, didn't even know about the legacy. Denzel gave the money, and 10 years later, they're one of the top 5 debate programs in the country. Thank you. This brother right here, Austin Dean, was one of the recipients of the scholarships. I think he came 3 or 4 years after the program was reinvigorated. And how many national championships did you win?
21.
21. Now this is the brother who had to get a GED from the Bay Area. Had a tough kind of background in terms of some struggles, but became one of the greatest debater that we had since Henry Heights, who Nate played in the film. So it was very appropriate. So I'm going to pass the mic to him, to Austin Dean, so that he can introduce Black Bone. Let's give it up for Austin.
I don't think I need a mic. If you can hear me, say yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. If you blessed, say yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Woo! What's up, everybody? I'm so happy to see all of you guys. Me personally, I need everybody to just kind of look to the person to your left. Say, I see you. I see you. Look to the person to your right. Say, I see you. This moment is a lot right now. Yo, we're trying to bring generations together. Yes. That's why I'm so excited right now, because I feel like now is the moment for that to happen. And I'm with beautiful classmates who are ready. Yes. Y'all, me personally, this means so much. I went to Wiley College when the school didn't have a student center for 4 years. But I learned so much about character. Nice. I'd never made a film before. I only did speech and debate. This is the first time I got to learn what filmmaking is. Yes. And I don't mean to bring too much, but there's a lot of people that don't know. Our generation, we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues too. Yes. We're dealing with a lot of trauma too. Yes. There's a lot of things that are going down through lineage that we don't talk about. But my beautiful classmates and comrades, we decided that we wanted to look at those situations face to face. And we want to do it generationally. We don't want to be separated from our great-grandparents or grandparents anymore. And we don't want the young ones behind us being disconnected, because in order for us to fix this diaspora issue, we have to connect and deal with the things that hurt. Yes. Now, this process was a lot. We met each other like, oh, what's going on? But we talked about real conversations. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was able to cry in a room with beautiful black spirits, and I didn't think as a black man I could do that. This is possible. saying the time is now. Let me say now. Now. Because we're ready to heal now, right now? Now. And I'm excited because we're starting the healing process through filmmaking and storytelling. Yes. Y'all ain't got to worry no more. We the griots. We ready. Yes. We ready. And we made this right now to show you guys that we're trying to heal through this process. We wrote this script, and we stayed there for like 20 hours. Yeah. We stayed in a room, locked up with some people. You know, we doing some stuff. We looked each other in the eyes like, oh, we don't know about this line, we don't know about that line, but we learned about community unity. Because the community must be in unity, and unity has to be in the community. And the collaboration process meant so much to me that when I was able to see these people for so many months, I got sad. I missed them. I came from an HBCU where I go to a PWI, and it's hard being in a predominantly white space as a black body. You need community. You need healing. You need love. I cried because I was able to be around people who told me, they looked me in the eyes and said, brother, I love you. I love hearing things like that. We don't talk about that much. So I appreciate all of you guys taking out your time today. You could have been anywhere in the world, but God said you need to be here. Amen. So I thank all of you guys for watching. Can you guys, before we watch it, can you please give a round of applause to all my classmates who weren't able to stand up? I love y'all. Y'all are my family. And you all are my family as well. Can I ever just say, I love you? I love you. Yeah, we can talk about love. That's all right. What we're going to do right now through this film is we're going to talk about healing and trauma. So some things might be a little uncomfortable, but in order to deal with these things, we have to look them in the eye. So it may seem a little horrifying at sometimes when those trying to do this to get to the healing. We got to, get through this obstacle, get to the next one, then we can put our hands up as champions like we are. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I hope you enjoy it. So if something spooky, go ahead, feel it. And the conversation is going to be amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, one thing. When I say black, you say blue. Black, 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 black.
Let's give it up one more time for that crew, y'all. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lurie Favors. I am an attorney and the general counsel at the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, New York. I bring you greetings from the East Coast, and apparently my weather patterns too, because I thought it didn't rain in Southern California, and I've been cold ever since I got off the plane. As they're setting up, we just wanted to really take some time to speak with some of the folks who are behind this instrumental piece of work. And as they are setting up, could we please give these students one more round of applause? So we're going to have them come up one at a time and introduce themselves. Go ahead. I'll let y'all come in whatever order makes the most sense for you. Come on. Name and...
Hi, my name is Justice Quinn. I'm an actor in the film. I star as DeAndre, and I'm glad you guys came to go see this. And I'm currently in my last year at the Los Angeles City College Theater Academy, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Hi, how y'all doing? Thank you for coming out. My name is Shemar Jonas. I'm a co-director on the film. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm currently in New York City acting professionally, and yes, that's all I do.
Hey y'all, my name is India Johnson. I was a co-director of this film. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I recently graduated in December, so I moved out here about 2.5 weeks ago. So I'm just happy to see all of you. You guys look great.
How y'all doing? My name is Jaylon Bolden. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, but I'm actually a student at Wiley College. I'm a junior. Wiley College is actually where the foundation is hosted every summer and where the film is shot. So this is special to me for you guys to see my school on screen. And it's truly a blessing. So shout out to Wiley College. Thank you.
Schuyler Nickleberry. I'm a co-writer on this film, which was a It was a journey. We're going to get into that, though. But I'm a junior at Clark and Lane University studying television and film. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. And again, I'm so excited to see everybody here. And I can't wait to get into it.
Now, one of the things that I really wanted people to focus on, and I know that we mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, if you were here for the initial documentary which showed the work that the students do and how they do it, one of the things that's always impressive for me is that these students meet on day 1, they pitch stories on day 2, they start writing, acting, working on film work, behind the camera work on day 3, and 7 to 10 days later, they have a final product, right? And so I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about what that process was like, some of the challenges that you experienced, and what you want people to know from that experience.
I think we all, when we came, we knew that we were shooting a film. And so I think everybody came with a common goal. And I think the days before the film, where we had education, cultural enrichment, were all there to get us on even more of a common goal and a common ground and find a common purpose, but not just the film that we were shooting that week, but the films that we would shoot even after we left. So I think all of that made it so much easier for us to shoot a film in such a tight space because our goal and our purpose was the same.
And I would say something that's very interesting about the Film Institute is that it was 25 of us. We came from all across the country. We didn't know each other, complete strangers. But we were able to bond, and everything was genuine. The relationships were heartfelt. I felt like I had known these individuals all my life. So for me, I had never, coming from a PWI, I had never experienced anything like this before in my life. And it was gratifying. I love all these people. They're my family. And I guess, Schuyler, or you could talk about.
To kind of add to what India just said, one thing that's really special about the program out in Marshall, Texas is that, like she said, we all come from different parts of the country, and there's a stereotype that black people can't come together without arguments we've definitely proven that that's not a fact. Everybody is with love. It was not one argument. It was not any negative energy. Everybody just came to work. It was with love. We just bonded like a true family, and I felt like that's what helped us through, the challenges in making a film in 7 days.
I have to say from that question, growing up for me, usually when I was in all my theater classes or doing plays, I was usually the only black actor in the room. So oftentimes I felt like I had to represent for a mass majority of our people. And then coming here just to be across from all these other artists that look just like me, I mean, that is so freeing because, usually when I was doing plays, and it was kind of like there's something in the back of my head saying that it's just me against all these other people, all these other individuals that don't look like me, and then now being able to be in front of all these other people, all these other artists that want to speak truth about our history, about our ancestors, about our culture, and where we can all thrive from it. I think that's so special, and that, we all really came together as a family. It was really a blessing, this opportunity.
So now one of the things that, yes, we can give it up for that, definitely.
I was going to say that I knew that this program was going to be something special, down to the first interaction. We all got to the airport, we're just waiting around for everybody to arrive, and I don't know if y'all felt it, but it was just we kind of connected off bat. So I knew it was going to be special, and then from there we were on that 2-hour bus trip. We were all high. Oh my goodness! So I knew it was going to be family from then, because the first interaction we had with each other, going throughout the week. It was something very special. Just being at Wiley College, because they explained to us, how, it was holy ground, and I didn't understand it at first, but the more that, we talked and that we learned and, had conversations with each other and just toured around the campus, you, literally felt the spirit that they were telling us about. So, it was very grounding for me. And I came in, I'm a sponge, if y'all heard it in the short documentary my sister Maya said, I came in, I didn't really want to expect anything because I didn't want, expect something to be totally different. So I came in very clear, and I was a sponge. And I had people who were like-minded, as everyone was mentioning, to just bounce ideas off of. I didn't feel like I didn't belong. I was in a room where I finally felt like I belonged. And the final takeaway from the whole experience for me was finding that I have a voice, that it's powerful just as anybody else's, and I have the platform, to say whatever I want to say.
Now, obviously, this is a film that's dealing with the multi-generational trauma from what we've experienced as people of African descent, be it slavery, be it colonization, the internalization of anti-blackness. All of these things are present in the film. And one of the things that is so important for me, at least because I had the privilege of attending the Alabama workshops with some of you guys. Some of these students went down to Alabama to interview Brian Stevenson, who's a civil rights attorney. He's doing a lot of work against the death penalty and civil rights and social justice. They saw the monument that's dedicated to the lynching memorial, and you got to experience a lot of that work. And a lot of that we see on the screen. You did this in a short amount of time. If you had a full hour, if you had a full 2 weeks, maybe even a month, to put into this work and to flesh that story out, what would you have added?
I had an idea that came up in my head. The parts where the kids are sitting around with the dominoes and then we go back in time in a way, I think that would have been interesting if maybe it was as if we were so transported there that it was almost as we were there, so we got to be actually watching it. So maybe there's maybe scenes are shifting, like in the scenes where we're actually wearing the clothes back then in that era. We don't necessarily interact with the other characters, but we're kind of like just that fly on the wall that gets to witness everything. But it's almost that haunting sense of that we can't do anything. Yeah, I think that's what I think of that.
Personally, I feel like if we added a backstory as to what the grandparents possibly were accused of doing or what kind of led to the cause of death, I feel like would be really interesting.
I think I would have added more story that we could have really dove into the generational trauma and how it started with the grandfather. And some of the everyday things and months and year things that happen, and things that I think we as African Americans and people of color have generational trauma that we don't even recognize as trauma. And I think if we would have been able to see a little bit of that, we would have seen how the grandfather passed that trauma down to his children, and it was passed down to his grandchildren. And then we would have better had a full scope of how them being able to go back to what they had forgotten or what had not been given to them and deal with that and bury that can allow and can help some of us as African Americans deal with and bury some of the things that we deal with today that we don't even know the genesis of.
And this is particularly interesting to me. I'm not a horror film lover, but Jordan Peele, like a lot of work that we're seeing right now in horror film in the Black community, is really something that's impressive and powerful. And for me, this has a thriller component to it, looking at how the lynching of this Black woman and how generations later her family is still dealing with that pain and that trauma. It makes us really think about the traumas that we're all holding on to within our own families, right? And that's the power of film, right? So one of the things I wanted to know, one question I had is, what was the most salient message that you want the audience to come away from when they see this?
I would probably say, in our community, we don't usually talk about things. We, hold a lot inside, and we don't usually talk to our children, or we don't usually, express that you can show emotion. It's okay, or let's talk about things that have gone on to our ancestors, and let's try to work this thing out, because, as Jaylon said, a lot of that trauma has been passed down, and it's stuff that we deal with every single day, and we don't necessarily have direct, access to going to therapy and to all these things that can help get through these obstacles that we face. So I would just say the main takeaway would be to, just be open with talking, unpacking these things, voicing how you feel. Don't hold it in. Let's get through it and heal together. And I would say that since the children, they were able to really figure out what happened to their grandmother, and they were able to have that closure and that peace of knowing, of course it's a traumatic thing that happened to her, but they were able to really just come together, and you saw their love and their bond, how much they cared about one another. And I think that's the family love. You have that support system. So always lean on those people that are in your corner and talk about things that hurt, so you can heal ultimately.
All right, final question. I know that in the first few days of this 7 to 10 day institute where you guys are learning the technical aspects of film, you're learning how to write, how to perform, how to direct. The first several days are dedicated to a deep dive into history, into culture. It's almost set up as a rite of passage. How did that particular part of the experience shape the content that you guys produced as filmmakers thereafter?
I think that had everything to do with the film and even how it shaped the film. Because one of the first things that Brian and everybody taught us about was the idea of a Sankofa, and that is to go back and get what you have forgotten. And I think it's important for us as Black people to go back and get the history that we've forgotten, go back and get the strength that we have forgotten, go back and get the hope that we have forgotten. And when we all came together and they planted that seed of Sankofa and unity, it truly brought a different air into the room. And so even when we had struggles with directing or writing or miscommunications, we all understood that we were there to go back and get what we were forgotten together, like we were on a unified mission. And so I think that's why our story ended up bit of being about generational curses, because we had to go back and get and remember. And I think that's something that we as young people must do, is to be reminded of the struggles that our grandparents and our great-grandparents have went through.
There was this one pivotal moment that happened, I believe, after one of the workshops. We all sat in a circle, held hands, and after we did the call to action, now more than ever, by Gil Scott Heron, we started naming our ancestors, names like Trayvon, Michael Jackson, and all these fallen Black bodies. It was chilling. It was truly chilling to me. Like we were calling upon them. I felt like their spirits was literally in that room with us. That was a very pivotal moment, and I think that definitely shaped for me. It put it into perspective. Like, these are the people that, came before you, and they made such an impact, and they're gone. So, this is up to you to carry on that legacy that they left here. And I feel like we did justice with our film. Definitely, if we had more time, we could really go into it, as Jaylon was saying. But that moment right there, it was very, like I said, pivotal, and really shaped it.
Everybody said beautiful answers. I could only piggyback off a little bit of what everybody said. I feel like the opening days definitely did influence us choosing to tell this story, because I feel like we were so immersed in a lot of different things that we didn't know. Like Jaylon pointed out, the whole Sankofa reference. In order to know where we're going, we have to know where we came from and certain things that we dealt with. And it made me look at the film in itself in a whole different light, or a whole different perspective. I feel as if I wasn't educated on some of the things that we were taught in the first couple of days. Like the ending scene of the film, when one of the characters mentioned, did the grandparents get a proper burial? For me, how I interpreted that was more so, I guess, from a spectrum as, we deal with our problems, we face it, and then we properly bury it. So you have to deal with these things, you deal with these traumas, and you heal properly, and then you can put it away and go forward, but you have to acknowledge it before you can go forward. So I definitely feel like it influenced us, and I'm happy we chose this story to tell.
And go ahead.
Thinking about the film at the end when you were talking about burying, I think one thing that I took away from this is that even though it's a lynching in the beginning, I mean, in a way, the story itself is timeless. Even though there's not technically a lot of lynchings going on now, there's different ways of us being attacked in this generation. So I definitely think that there's a lot of parallels to the grandparents to us. And the idea of burying the bones in the end, I think it's about, trauma, how we face trauma. Because a lot of us, we either bury the bones, like how we did at the end, it's like a breath of fresh air, or we bury it internally. And we don't often talk about that. And even in the scene, they get to talk about, at least like have a communal space where they can talk about these things. But like what we got to do at the Nate Parker Foundation, we got to speak about these things. But in regular day-to-day life, we don't get to do those things. And the movie itself, it's a theme, it's a thriller, but in a way, I think each of our lives as black men and women, it's a thriller. Our lives are a living thriller. Because we go day to day life. I mean, sometimes when I'm on my way to acting training or things like that, I'm just wondering if I'm going to make it home the next time. I mean, I'm wondering if I'm going to get home to see my family. And that kind of thing, to me, that's a thriller in itself. I mean, to not know if you're going to be able to make it home alive, like you're just going from point A to point B. And I think that this film really just shows that there's a strong parallel and that the times, in a way, have changed, but they've also, they've progressed but degressed at the same time. And I think that brings that to light.
So, for time's sake, because we do have a few other pieces that we want to make sure that we're able to share with you, but I was told recently by a very intelligent person who told me that the segment of our brain that processes sound is right next to the segment of our brain that processes vision. And when you combine those two things, it's one of the most powerful forms of media. It's one of the most powerful ways of transmitting a story, of being the griot. And I just want to acknowledge that you guys have put together something that is so stimulating and so wonderfully well representative of the talent that often remains untapped in our community. Let's just give them another round of applause. And thank you to the Nate Parker Foundation for organizing these students and bringing them here to this. And we'll getting ready for the next film, which is going to be Jalea. Jalea, could you come up, please?
Hello, you guys. I would like to introduce my film, Things with Feathers. This is a story that is near and dear to my heart. It's loosely based off of my life. And I actually started writing this a month after I left the program. And just being there gave me the courage and the strength to tell this story. It's about a young girl who's sexually assaulted by her cousin and how her family deals with it, how she deals with it, and how she ultimately tries and finds hope. And just to kind of, I honored this film to my grandmother, who next week will be 2 years since her passing, and I think just being able to share it today is just a blessing. And I thank you guys for giving me the platform to show this film. So hope you guys enjoy it, and I look forward to giving you a discussion about it afterwards. So thank you.
So I just want to take a moment to properly introduce Miss Jalea Jackson as we bring our lights up. We can give her another round of applause. As if she truly needs an introduction after the amazing work that we just saw on the screen. But you should know who this young woman is because you will be seeing a lot from her. Jalea Jackson is a director and producer who aims to create films that spark conversation, and she certainly did that today. She was one of 30 students who piloted the Nate Parker Film School at Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. As a recent honor and theater graduate from Louisiana State University, give it up for this new graduate, y'all. Jalea has won multiple awards for her work as an editor, photographer, filmmaker, and producer. In LSU's Take Two Film Festival 2016, she won Best Director, Best Documentary, and honorable mention for Best Drama. We can all see why. She won Best Screenplay in LSU's UTIES 2016. Since graduating, she's continued to pursue her dream of directing and producing, and is learning while working on other film projects in the New Orleans area as a production manager. That's right, all right. For Elephant Quilt Productions. Jalea also works with other artists on her own productions outside of work, and she recently founded the Jalea Jackson Production, LLC. Give it up. Black talent, black business, entrepreneurship, black women magic. In June 2015, following the release of a short documentary redefining the N-word, the documentary focused on the meaning of the N-word within the black community, leading her to continue her exploration of culture and the human condition. Can we please honor this sister with another round of applause? Jalea, this was such a powerful film. And I think we would all agree in the era of Me Too, where we are looking at new levels of accountability as it pertains to how we engage with women, how we engage with the issues of sexual assault across genders within our community. Your film takes such an important topic for our time and frames it in a way that I think stirs a lot of us to be uncomfortable and yet completely drawn into what it was you were portraying on the screen. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration and why you thought it was important to address sexual assault in this way.
Yeah, cool, you guys can hear me. It's loosely based off of my life, and I use that word very strongly. But as you, like, I was one of the first students for the program, and I remember one of the mentors was talking to one of the students. I was just happening to walk by, and he was saying, if you're sitting on a story that you're unwilling to share, then you're being selfish. And I remember just thinking about that and really contemplating what he said, and the script actually started off as a letter to my cousin, and then from there it turned into the short film that you guys have seen today. And I'm a visual person. I like to use my voice and speak my truth through my films, and I just kind of decided to produce this and show it to you guys. I think it's very important. I like to have conversations and discussions based off of films, so we can have a community involvement, community discussion, and hopefully change the environment and the conditions that we currently are in.
Now, we don't typically like to talk about sexual assault at all, but particularly within our own community. There's the phrase in the film, we don't like to air the laundry. We all know the phrases, and we sit to the other side of the table when there's so-and-so is in the family, and we haven't excommunicated so-and-so. We have a lot of different ways of coping, I put that loosely in air quotes, right, within our own community when it comes to issues of assault. And yet you demonstrate in this piece how each family member, each of them, played a role in protecting the abuser. What impact does that type of secrecy have on the victim?
Well, actually, the only ally that, and during the pre-production and the script analysis, we realized that the mom actually is more like the protagonist in any of this. And you can kind of see at the end when all of the other family members are twisting and turning her, the mom is out there trying to reach and trying to grab her. But I think in having an environment where you don't feel like someone, like you having one that you can talk to, it kind of silences you. And in the short film, after Aaliyah says, brazen took me into his room, we don't really hear her speak the rest of the film. The more pivotal point is at the end when she screams, and I kind of show that as a way for her finally kind of gaining her voice, kind of gaining her sense and her identity, kind of gaining that back. But I think when you're in an environment where you feel like you can't talk to anybody, it really kind of shuts you down and you feel like there's nowhere to turn. So I think having everyone else but her mom, which I think just that role in general, just having at least that one person that you can turn to, I think is very important. But having those other people can really be detrimental. I think you feel like you won't be able to talk to, and that is where the problem can occur.
There was a religious element in here that really spoke to me. I was raised as a church girl. Any of the church folks in the room? Okay, so seeing some of those images on the screen, that was hard. That hit hard in a particularly challenging way. And when you're paying attention to what's happening in the news, if you saw what was going on, the Southern Baptists, or I believe that was the denomination, recently there was over 700 cases of abuse that had been hidden within the church. We've seen this a lot with other denominations. What role do you think the religious community plays in protecting abusers and perpetuating the abuse that we're often not willing to address?
Yeah, I grew up in the church, and I think one of the aspects is we feel like we say, oh, just pray about it, we're just going to leave it up to God, and we don't seek help outside of the church. And that's why I have the scene with the mom. She's taking her to see the psychiatrist, and she has a different spin and a different viewpoint on how to react and how to respond to the sexual assault. But again, kind of with the last question, we keep it hidden, we keep it hush-hush, keep it within the family or within the confines of our home. And again, you feel like you can't talk about it. And I think that's where the problem persists, and that's where we can't find hope, we can't find healing. If we go to someone like, oh, just keep praying about it, keep he trusts in God and everything. So I wanted to, because I was telling the church, I wanted to just show those different aspects and show that there are other ways, as a Christian, that you can go and seek help, not just within the church.
Now, my last question. You were in the inaugural class of the Nate Parker Foundation Summer Film City. Woo woo! All right, we can give it up for y'all. Can you talk about how your experience with the organization and that summer experience, how did that inspire you to tell your story?
I actually met Nate at Sundance. That was the first time I went in. The Birth of a Nation was the first film that I saw. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to see any other films. Like, I am set. And the next day, I found out that he was having a panel discussion. I was like, okay, guys, I have to go. And I remember I got a chance to ask him a question. I was like, how do you tell the stories that you want to tell? Being at a PWI at LSU and being one of the few Black faces in those spaces, you're kind of looked down upon. They don't want to tell your story, then it's very hard to tell the stories that you want to tell. And he was just like, you just have to tell those stories. You have to find your demographic. You have to find your target audience. And funny story, I found out about the program a little bit late, and I applied, missed the deadline, and then was able to get accepted, which was an amazing blessing. But just going there, I found my voice, I found my people, I found my tribe, I found my family, and and they just really helped me to find my voice. And I realized I love being an editor, and that's my main thing. And I realized, though, I can't just kind of be behind the scenes like I like to. If there's stories that I want to tell, stories that I want to bring to the world, I kind of have to direct, write, produce. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't been in the program and being able to find my voice and just find the courage to tell these stories. So thank you guys so much.
How do we follow you? I know I said that was the last question, but how do we follow you?
Yes, for the film Things with Feathers, we are on Facebook and Instagram, Things with Feathers 2017. You can follow me on Instagram at jjackson_12. On Facebook, I am the Jalea Jackson. And I also have a website, JaleaJackson.com.
Let's give it up for Jalea Jackson.
Okay. So we are going to keep it moving. Let's give it up one more time for my little sister. At this time, we're running short on time, and we have one more short trailer to show you to introduce you to a really special project that we have going on right now. Could I have my Hbcu Storytellers, my Hamptonians, and my Wiley students, my Hbcu Storytellers, could you stand up? So these are about 4 or 5 of the 20 students that we have been working with for the past year in a project that we call the Hbcu Storytellers, which is a partnership with the Kellogg Foundation. How many of you know that on August 25th this year will be the 400-year commemoration of the first Africans that were brought here? How many of y'all knew that? And it's now look around really quick. Keep your hands up. That's less than a quarter of us know this, which is really interesting. I'm a teacher, and when you start to talk to young people about their immigration stories, most people, if you're in a diverse classroom, can tell you about how their people got here. But a lot of us, we don't even know the roots of our tree. So the Hbcu Storytellers Project, we have a docu-series coming out. We have 4 short documentaries that are coming out with college students from Virginia State, Hampton, Norfolk State, and Virginia State, or Virginia Union, I'm sorry. One is dealing with, we go to Alabama, we got a documentary that highlights Brian Stevenson and the work that he's doing with the lynching memorial. We go to Jamestown and Port Comfort and tell the story of the first Africans that were brought here. And I'm a Black history teacher, and I did not even know that the first Africans that were brought here on a ship going to the Gulf of Mexico, captured Portuguese slave ships, captured by English slave ships, and brought to Hampton over in Port Comfort. So we're going to tell that story. Then they go to Charlottesville. They tell the story of West Bellamy and Zana Bryant, the individuals that started the whole controversy behind the Robert E. Lee statue that led to the Unite the Right. And then lastly, we went to Richmond, Virginia, to tell the story of the Emancipation Proclamation Memorial that's being erected this year to honor Nat Turner and 8 other freedom fighters. in our community. So keep your eyes, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. It's been a beautiful project. Not only have they been able to hold the camera and tell their stories, they've been able to connect with elders and to do all this amazing research. So next school year, we're actually going to start this summer, we're going to be doing screenings all over the country for the 400-year commemoration. So if you want to see them next year, bring them to your school, bring them to your church, bring them to your college, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be planting seeds and not only showing these films, but having dialogues about where we are 400 years later and where we want to go. It's significant because in Ghana right now, they're doing a welcome home, right? 400 years later, come home, dual citizenship. And we're saying 400 years later, we still dealing with some of these same issues. So a really significant time. And we're going to check out a little trailer about the Hbcu Storytellers. So let's clap it up, y'all.
Can we have all students stand again? You're not only looking at the future, you're looking at the answers. We talk about crisis. We spend so much time talking about crisis and so little time talking about solutions. I saw YouTube not too long ago, and I'd known the quote, but I watched it. Malcolm X is one of my heroes, and he said he was standing opposite a reporter. And it's interesting how when people like Malcolm stand in front of reporters, they try so hard to trap them. They want them so desperately to say something that either doesn't make sense, that contradicts another brother that looks like him, or create some type of salacious headline for the next day's newspaper. And they said, well, Malcolm, brother, he didn't call him brother. He said, Malcolm, you can't say there hasn't been progress. You have to admit there's been progress. You have to admit he thought he had him trapped. And without hesitating, Brother Malcolm said, well, if you stick a knife in my back 7 inches and take it out 2 inches, that's not progress. He said you must take the knife all the way out, then you must clean the wound, then you should sew it up and treat it so it heals. What we're trying to do with this foundation is create a mechanism, a device of healing. Brian and I, when we were going into those alternative schools 20 years ago, for no money, in between me working, we said, if we can get these young people, the outcast, the expendable, the one that they said could not learn, didn't want to be there, wanted to end up in prison, if we can get these leaders to buy into this idea that they too can be storytellers, that they can use the trauma of their past to help us create a new future for all of us, then that will be the answer that we can institutionalize into a foundation. And that's what we've done. That's what we're doing. We're not going to be, thank you, ma'am. We refuse to be fatalists. Any of us. We have children. They're right here. And those children represent children who represent more children. And the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So it's not enough for us to stand in a space, whether we be in church waiting to die. I'm a Christian, I'm just keeping it real. Or we're outside hoarding our money, eating well, waiting to die. Because these problems aren't going to go away. You've only seen a few stories. There's so many stories we have to tell. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of those things. There are people that wake up and do great work every day. Lord's blessed me to want to move a camera around. That's my weapon. Nat Turner had a sword so I could have a camera. The courage that Harriet had to have walking those nights, fear. I mean, we get nervous. We hear a creak in our house. Did the alarm go off? But Sister Harriet would have meetings with people looking around like, who's Judas? Will I make it out of this house tonight? They went through that real passage so we can, in our comfort, set our feet in courage. We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to contribute? There's a problem when a lot of our young black brothers aren't going to college. The stats are true. Where are all the black, where? We know where they are. We know. Just because they're not talking about it in the primary of the debates doesn't mean those brothers aren't in prison in San Quentin. You saw Jalea's film. Just because we're not talking about it doesn't mean it's not happening. How many degrees of separation? It's up to us to tell these stories because sometimes it's the only tool we have. In a time where our power is consistently subverted when we move into power positions. All we got is us, y'all. That's all we got. So my hope is that by creating this platform, that anyone that looks like us, that has a story to tell, not just for money, because it ain't about that, and our students know, but out of sheer responsibility to all of those behind us and all of us who came before us that are waiting for us to do something. This is our attempt to be the solution, to be the leaders we're looking for. If you believe in what you've seen, if you believe in what you've heard, I ask you to support us. It doesn't have to be monetarily, financially, we love it. But really just figure out who these students are. It's on the website. You can follow them through their socials, support their films. A lot of them are only able to make their films through the contributions of, crowdfunding, or help through the organization. Storytelling in itself is easy. You can tell a story anywhere, but being able to do it like this takes resources, right? And there was a time, like Wall Street, where we only had to look to our community to tell the stories we wanted to tell. Oscar Michelle, anyone who knows who he is, right? So our history is there. The jewels are there just beneath the sand. But we have to support this next generation rather than condemn them. We have to support them. Rather than criticize them because they're different, we have to support them. So thank you for so much for coming out. I'm going to give the mic for about 1 minute to my wonderful sitting executive director who keeps this thing turning so she can tell you a little bit more about what we're doing in the formal way. I just bring that passion. But I thank you for coming out. It means so much to me that you're giving this evening. Thank you to all my students. You shine, you shine, you shine. I appreciate you.
Thank you. This will literally be 1 minute, but Nate asked you all to support the work, and I invite you to do so. This does cost time and money, and I also want to just thank all of the MPF team here. It takes a village. James in the back, obviously Brian's been running this all night. Who else is here? We've got our board members here. We've got Twinkie in the back who has helped to be a part of this. It takes a village, and I'm grateful that you're all here. And whoever I didn't say, it's only because I didn't see you, not because I don't love you. But to the students, you guys, you really, really inspired me tonight. If we're not starting our week inspired, there's something wrong. So I thank you again. There's information about us as you exit. Continue to support the work. Continue to follow us. Get to know us better. And you guys have a fantastic week. Thank you.
If you could just stay for one more second. Brian is going to lead us in a call and response that we do, that we start with when we start MPF, that gets us on the same page, connects us with the diaspora.
That's right. Ashe. All right. If we could all stand up. If we can all stand up. We like to close all of our sessions, all of our meetings with a communal affirmation. It's a call and response, a ritual, an African ritual. That's actually very powerful. And it's a poem by one of our ancestors, the great brother Gil Scott Heron. And it's called Now More Than Ever. So we're going to say that with some energy because these young people, as Nate said, they are tomorrow's answer. Yes. So as we pour into them, we are pouring into our children's children's children. Ashe? Ashe is a Yoruba term for I am in agreement with. Right? As we learn who we are, we get these words and we get this power back. So we're going to do a call and response. In the end, we're going to say Ashe, and we're going to say it with some energy because we packed this house today and we made our students feel very special. Right? So we're going to end this out right. So if you could just touch somebody, we usually like to do this in a circle, but this room isn't conducive to that. So if you could touch somebody and repeat after me with some energy. Y'all, are we ready?
Yes.
Right. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Must come together. All the brothers and sisters everywhere. Must see that the time is in the air. Common blood flows. Through common veins. And common eyes. All see the same. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Must come together. Ashe. Clap it up, y'all. Thank you very much. A few names as we leave. We want to give it up for Brother Dwight. Clap it up for Brother Dwight. Where's Deanna? Deanna. Clap it up for Deanna. And where's my lovely wife? Give it up for our facilitator, my lovely wife, Lurie Daniel Favors.